Hi, Patty. Hi, Lessa. Hi, Mariam. Hey, Sunita. So tip number 1, you can actually do a myth-truth sandwich using your own personal story, but only if that story is relatable. Like, you have to be able to tell that story and people guys like, oh my God, I understand. Like, I get it. I've been there too. Tip number 2, you know how people say, just follow your passion, do what you love. That's a common saying. So whatever is like a common saying, see if you can put that myth in, find a common saying for that myth. And if it's not, most likely it's not a myth. Tip number 3, I have to actually put myself in my audience's shoes. And what I mean by that is like, bring yourself back when you believed in the myth, before you learned the lesson, right? And now you're writing for that person. What do they need to know? Tip number 4, the final lesson that you teach is not the opposite of the myth. So if I say, do what you love is a myth, the lesson isn't, don't do what you love. That's not the lesson, right? Because that's the opposite of the myth. The lesson is somewhere in between. Yes, do what you love, but you also have to learn to love all the things that you don't like to do. Tip number 5, I saw that a lot of people are not putting example. So you have to give the myth, and then you have to give me an example that I can understand that's going to debunk that myth, right? Tip number 6, whatever myth that you're trying to break in one area, if you think about it, how does that myth and truth apply in other areas in life, like health, wellness, business, money, relationships, things like that? The reason why you have to use extreme examples is because most people don't see when you're self-censoring because you're afraid to get canceled. That's a slippery slope to going there. That's how North Korea started back in 1960. And then look at North Korea now, right? So it's a slippery slope to there. And that's the reason why we don't understand the mistakes that we're making on the subtle ways. I have to use extreme examples to show them this is what's happening. Tip number 8, you have to go through one rewrite where you literally put yourself in your audience's shoes, like whoever needs to hear this message, like completely from their perspective, and read it again and to see if they understand. The reason why when you watch me write, it takes me like 2 hours to write these carousels is because I rewrite every sentence like over and over and over again. Obviously, you want to be accurate in the information, but you also want to be short, and you have to find that balance, because what happens is, like, if you keep it too short and you lose context or you lose some of the information that didn't serve its purpose because they didn't get it because you missed that information, obviously that's bad, right? But if you try to include all the information and you make it too long, like, most people are not going to bother reading it. And then once you've done that writing, now you need to go through it again and literally see every word and find a simpler word. A lot of times what I have to do in order to keep everything short, instead of like explaining the concept in detail, I just use anchoring words or phrases. Okay, final tip, get in the habit of saying, for example, whenever you explain anything to anyone, just end that explanation with, for example. And do it even if you don't have the example. And you see me do that a lot. Like, if you go back and watch all my Sunday services, you'll see me be like, oh, for example, but I don't have an example yet. But you see me do this, like, oh, for example, and then, let me think of an example. And then, like, it forces me to think of an example, right? Doing that and forcing you to come up with an example actually is, you're training your brain to connect the dots. Like, oh, what's something that's similar to this that I can use as an example? In your group, when you meet with your group, I want you to share these things. Be honest with your answers. If you don't think it helps you at all, say that it didn't help you. It's been an amazing 11 weeks spending with all of you. I'm really, really excited for next quarter. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Sam.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all. Bye.
Bye, guys.